Hi, I've got a whole load of questions here and I'm going to try and answer them briefly if I can, but forgive me if they get a bit long. I got one here from Eleanor. What's your favourite musical? Well, that is a kind of really difficult question, isn't it? Because obviously of the modern batches, I love Hamilton, I love Dear Evan Hansen. But going back in time, really, I guess probably my two favourite musicals are West Side Story, which I was lucky enough to see when I was a kid and made an incredible impression on me, and the music's as fresh as it ever was. And probably, actually, my other favourite musical is My Fair Lady, although neither of them were written by my heroes, Rodgers and Hammerstein. I think Richard Rodgers, the composer, he really is the greatest of all 20th century melodists. And for me, I guess South Pacific is the one that I'd put the movie on if I really, really wanted to, even though I don't think it's actually a very great movie, but it's the most amazing score with Some Enchanted Evening and Younger Than Springtime, Bally High, you just name it, it goes on and on, every single song, an absolute total winner. From We Love West End, who inspired you to get into theatre? Well, nobody inspired me to get me into theatre. I was just lucky. I was taken to a couple of shows when I was very young. The first was the pantomime at the Palladium, which I just loved, but I just loved the theatre. And I still pinch myself to think that the theatre that I first went to when I was a kid, I'm very, very proud to be looking after. I say I own it, but I'm only really looking after it for the future. And it's just the most incredible building. But coming back to that, I mean, I guess the Palladium inspired me. I also, it wasn't a show, it was a play. I saw The Tempest in the Theatre Royal Drury Lane, and then I saw My Fair Lady there. And I just got bitten by musical theatre and opera particularly as well. And it just was in my blood, not my parents' blood. They were musicians, but they were not from the theatre, although I had an aunt who was an actress and a wonderful cook, but that's another story. This is from somebody called Jeremias, who said, how long did it take to compose the entire score for the Phantom of the Opera? Well, like every musical, the idea of the Phantom hit me when I read the book, and I thought there was an incredibly good story there lurking in a not brilliant book. And I started to pen what is the outline of the story for the present Phantom of the Opera myself. And then it's a little bit like filling in a jigsaw, you know, it's like you find the right song for the right place, for the right person, the right time. You can't be precise about how it's going to come. So although the Phantom was written relatively quickly, it probably was written over the period of a year. And then there is all the time when you start changing, when you go into rehearsals. I'm right in the middle of my new Cinderella at the moment, and basically started writing it over a year ago because we keep challenging ourselves. And is it right? Is this scene right? Is our story right? And that same went with Phantom. And I always say that it takes roughly 3 years from the idea of a musical to it coming on stage if it's ever going to get that far. Gosh, question here, what's the hardest song I've ever written to play on the piano? It's probably Rainbow High from Evita, and I'm not going to try. If you could play any part in any of your shows you wrote, which part would you play and why? Well, the answer is Serafimo in Phantom of the Opera, because the role is silent. I've got a question here from Carlo. What can we expect from Cinderella, my new show, hopefully opening, if we're allowed to, in London in October? Well, it's written by Emerald Fennell, or rather the new story is written by Emerald Fennell, who wrote the second series of Killing Eve. And it's really about how beauty equals pain. In fact, another way of putting it is about being yourself, and that you yourself is the real thing, and not trying to become beautiful or what you might think other people think is beautiful. That's what the real story is. It's actually a wonderful, wonderful tale she's written, with every single beat of Cinderella twisted around in another way. But it's still very faithful and very romantic. And I tell you what, as this enforced respite goes on, I shall be playing you something from Cinderella not too far away.